Your mother is gone, and this house needs to stop looking like a shrine to her, my dad's new wife said as she packed away every photo. I stayed silent until my dad finally saw what she'd really done. Then his face changed. I designed my first house when I was 11. It was on graph paper, and the proportions were completely wrong, but my mom sat with me at the kitchen table for 2 hours talking about load-bearing walls and why windows matter more than people think. She wasn't an architect. She was a middle school art teacher. But she understood that spaces shape how people feel, and she passed that down to me like it was genetic. My name's Craig. I'm 32, and I design homes for a living. Residential architecture, mostly custom builds and renovations in the suburbs north of Charlotte. I'm telling you this because what my mom taught me about spaces is the reason I noticed what was happening in my dad's house before anyone else did. My mom, Diane, died 3 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. 8 months from diagnosis to funeral. She was 57. My dad, Rob, was wrecked in the way that quiet men get wrecked. He didn't fall apart loudly. He just sort of dimmed. Retired from teaching the following year. Started spending a lot of time alone in the house my mom had put her fingerprints all over. And I mean that literally. When I was in high school, my parents did a full renovation on the house. Mom drove the whole design. She picked the built-in bookshelves in the living room, the arched doorway between the kitchen and dining room, the reading nook under the staircase window. She hand-painted a mural on the wall of the upstairs hallway. Wildflowers. Not some Pinterest project. It was beautiful. She spent 6 weekends on it. The house wasn't just where we lived. It was her. So when my dad started dating Vanessa about 18 months after Mom died, I tried to be open about it. I really did. My sister Megan, who lives in Virginia, told me I needed to let Dad find happiness again, and she was right. He deserved that. We both wanted that for him. Vanessa was fine at first. Mid-50s, divorced, worked in pharmaceutical sales. She smiled a lot. She laughed at Dad's history teacher jokes, which I'll admit is a low bar, because those jokes are terrible. She seemed attentive, caring, even. She'd bring over casseroles and sit with him on the porch. They got married after 8 months of dating. That was fast, and I told Dad it was fast, and he told me he wasn't getting any younger. Fair enough. The first sign came about 2 months after the wedding. I stopped by on a Saturday to help Dad fix a gutter that was pulling away from the fascia board. I walked into the living room, and something fell off. I stood there for a good 10 seconds before I figured out what it was. The photos on the mantel had been rearranged. Mom's portrait, the one from her and Dad's 25th anniversary, had been moved from the center to the far left end. In its place was a framed photo of Vanessa and Dad from their wedding. Look, I'm not unreasonable. Vanessa lives there now. She should have photos in the house. But the rearrangement wasn't about adding. It was about displacing. I didn't say anything. 2 weeks later, the anniversary portrait was gone entirely, replaced by a vase. Oh, I moved some things around, Vanessa said when I asked, her voice dripping with that particular sweetness that people use when they want you to feel crazy for noticing. The frame was getting dusty, and I thought a fresh arrangement would brighten up the room. Your dad agreed. I looked at my dad. He was standing by the kitchen doorway with a cup of coffee. He shrugged. She's got a better eye for decorating than I do. Here's what I learned early in my career. People will tell you what they're doing if you watch the spaces they create. A client who says they want an open floor plan but keeps adding walls is someone who actually wants control. A couple who insists on separate home offices isn't necessarily in trouble, but a couple who wants separate entrances might be. Vanessa was redesigning the emotional architecture of that house. Over the next several months, it accelerated. The family photo collage in the hallway came down. Too cluttered. Mom's collection of ceramic birds disappeared from the den windowsill. They're dated. The quilt Mom's mother had made, the one that always lived on the back of the living room couch, was folded and put in a closet. It doesn't match the new throw pillows. Every change had a reasonable explanation. That's what made it so effective. No single removal was dramatic enough to start a fight over. But the cumulative effect was undeniable. Diane was being erased from her own home, one object at a time. Megan noticed it too, on her visits. Is it just me? She said during a phone call. Or is Vanessa turning Dad's house into a model home? It wasn't just her. The mural went next. I showed up one afternoon, and the upstairs hallway smelled like fresh paint. Vanessa had painted over Mom's wildflowers with a shade called agreeable gray. That's a real paint color, by the way. You can't make this stuff up. It was chipping, Vanessa said. And honestly, Craig, Your mother painted that years ago. The hallway needed updating. I stood in that hallway and stared at the flat gray wall where 6 weekends of my mother's life used to be, and I felt something shift inside my chest. Not anger exactly. More like the moment when you realize the foundation has a crack and you need to figure out how deep it goes before you decide what to do. My dad walked past while I was standing there. He paused. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just thinking." He put his hand on my shoulder for a second, then kept walking. I don't know if he saw what I saw. I don't know if he let himself. Vanessa told anyone who would listen that she was helping Rob move forward. She used that phrase constantly. She told Megan that keeping the house as a shrine to die in wasn't healthy. She told my Uncle Dennis, Mom's brother, that she was creating space for new memories. She told our family friends that Rob was finally healing. And the thing is, some people bought it. Because on the surface, it sounded compassionate. Progressive, even. Who wants to be the person arguing that a widower should live in a museum of his dead wife? Except that's not what any of us were arguing. One evening in April, I stopped by to drop off a birthday card for Dad. Vanessa was in the kitchen and she pointed toward the garage. Rob's out there moving some things around. I found Dad standing next to a stack of about a dozen cardboard boxes along the back wall of the garage. Each one was labeled in Vanessa's handwriting with a black marker. Diane's things, living room. Diane's things, bedroom. Diane's things, Denver. Vanessa thought it would be good to consolidate everything, Dad said. He didn't look at me when he said it. Everything. The stuff we're not displaying anymore. Photos, her books, some of her collections. It's all organized. I nodded. Something in me wanted to open every single box right there, but I didn't. Instead, I just said, "That's a lot of boxes." "Well, your mother had a lot of stuff." On my way back through the garage, my elbow caught one of the boxes on the end of the stack. It shifted way too easily. I stopped, reached down and lifted it. It weighed almost nothing. The label read Diane's Things, Denver. I remembered what had been in the den. Mom's ceramic bird collection, her vintage record player, and the crate of vinyl records. A wooden jewelry box that had belonged to her grandmother. A framed set of watercolors she'd painted during a trip to Savannah. I set the box back down and looked at the label again. Then I walked to my car without saying another word. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept running the math in my head. A box labeled Diane's Things, Den, should have contained, at minimum, 30 to 40 ceramic birds, a crate of records, a jewelry box, framed artwork, and probably some books. That's not a light box. That's a box you need 2 hands and a decent back to move. The box I'd bumped weighed maybe 5 pounds. The next morning I called Megan and told her what I'd noticed. She went quiet for a long time. "Maybe she repacked some of it into different boxes," she said. "Maybe the labels don't match the contents. Maybe." "Craig, I know. I'm probably overthinking it." I was going to say you're probably not. Megan and I agreed to watch. Not confront, not accuse. Just watch. Because here's the thing about someone like Vanessa. If you go in with accusations and you're wrong, you've handed her a weapon she'll use for years. Craig tried to turn Rob against me. Craig can't accept his father's happiness. And if you're right, but you can't prove it, same result. So I watched. For the next few weeks, I made a point of stopping by Dad's house more often. Casual visits. Bringing coffee. Dropping off a book I thought he'd like. Offering to check the water heater. Stuff that kept me in the house long enough to notice things without making Vanessa suspicious. And I noticed. The built-in bookshelves in the living room, the ones Mom designed, had been mostly cleared out. Where Mom's art books and Dad's history collection used to fill 5 shelves, there were now decorative objects. Mercury glass candle holders. A fake succulent. A geometric sculpture that looked like it came from a home staging catalog. "Where are Dad's books?" I asked Vanessa one afternoon. "In the garage. We're simplifying." She said, simplifying the way someone might say detoxifying. Like the books were a contaminant. I went to the garage that evening. The book boxes were there, and they actually had books in them. But I also checked 2 of the Diane's Things boxes while Dad and Vanessa were watching television. The first one, labeled Diane's Things, bedroom, contained a few scarves, a bathrobe, and a lot of tissue paper. The things that should have been there. The jewelry box Mom kept on her dresser, the small oil painting that hung above the bed, the collection of first edition novels Mom had accumulated over 20 years, were gone. The second box, labeled Diane's Things, living room, held 3 framed photographs wrapped in newspaper and nothing else. Mom's anniversary portrait was one of them, at least. But the other items that had lived in the living room, the ceramic clock shaped like a sun that Mom found at a flea market in Asheville, a signed print from a local artist, the collection of vintage glass paperweights, were missing. I put the boxes back exactly how I found them. Took photos of the contents and the labels with my phone. Here's where I need you to understand something about my dad. Rob is a good man, an honest man, the kind of guy who spent 30 years teaching teenagers about the Constitutional Convention and somehow still believed in the best version of people. When Vanessa told him she was consolidating Diane's things into organized boxes, he trusted that. Why wouldn't he? His wife told him she'd taken care of it, and he believed her because the alternative was too ugly to process while he was still grieving. He wasn't complicit. He was managed. The confrontation I'd been dreading came on a Sunday afternoon in late May. Megan was visiting for the long weekend. She, Dad, Vanessa, and I were sitting on the back patio having iced tea. Megan casually mentioned that she'd love to have Mom's watercolor paintings from Savannah, said she wanted to frame them for her new apartment. Vanessa's face did this thing, just for a second, a micro-expression I might have missed if I hadn't been watching for it. Her smile tightened at the corners like someone had pulled invisible drawstrings. "Oh, sweetie, those are packed away in the garage," Vanessa said. "I can look for them." "That'd be great," Megan said. "I'd also love Mom's pearl earrings if nobody's claimed them. She always said she wanted me to have them." "Well, those are in the boxes too. I organized everything carefully. I'll dig through this week." Megan glanced at me. I kept my face neutral. Then Vanessa said the thing that I think she'd been building up to for months. "You know, I think it's wonderful that you two love your mother so much. I really do." She set down her glass and folded her hands in her lap the way people do when they're about to deliver a speech they've rehearsed. "But I want to be honest with you. As someone who cares deeply about your father's well-being, I've watched him struggle. This house, every room, every shelf, it was all Diane. And I understand that. She was a wonderful woman. But your father needs to build a life that isn't defined by loss." She paused for effect. Vanessa was good at pauses. "Your mother is gone, and this house needs to stop looking like a shrine to her. That's not healthy for Rob. It's not healthy for any of us. I'm not trying to erase her memory. I'm trying to help this family move forward." She delivered it with this expression of gentle concern, like a therapist who truly just wanted to help. And I'll give her credit. If I hadn't spent weeks checking those boxes, if I hadn't noticed what was missing, I might have bought it. I looked at Dad. He was staring at his iced tea. He didn't look convinced, exactly. He looked tired. Like this was a conversation he'd already had with her privately and didn't have the energy to have again in front of his kids. "Nobody's asking for a shrine, Vanessa," Megan said, and I could hear the careful control in her voice. "We just want to know that Mom's things are being respected. They matter to us." "Of course they do. And they're all safely in the garage." I almost said it. I almost said, "Are they?" But I held it. Because I still didn't have the full picture. And in my line of work, you don't start tearing down a wall until you know exactly what's behind it. That night, after Megan left and Dad went to bed, I sat in my car in the driveway for a while, scrolling through the photos I'd taken of the box contents. Something was nagging at me, but I couldn't place it yet. 3 days later, my Uncle Dennis called me. Dennis is my mom's older brother. Retired general contractor. Lives about 40 minutes outside of Charlotte. He'd been suspicious of Vanessa since the wedding. Not in a hostile way. Dennis isn't hostile about anything, but in a measured, careful way. He'd say things like, "I don't know about that one, Craig," and then change the subject. When he called me that Tuesday evening, his voice had a quality I'd never heard from him before. Tight. Almost electric. "Craig, I need you to look at something. I'm going to text you a link. Look at it right now." "What is it?" "Just look." I opened the link. It was an estate sale listing on one of those online consignment platforms. The listing was for a small oil painting. Wildflowers in a field. The description read, "Original oil painting, floral scene, artist unknown. Good condition. Mid-century style." I recognized it immediately. It had hung above my parents' bed for as long as I could remember. My mother painted it. "Dennis," I said, "how did you find this?" I wasn't looking for it. Linda was browsing for antiques, and she showed it to me because she thought it looked like Diane's style. I zoomed in on the signature in the corner. "It's hers, Craig. That's Diane's painting." I sat down on the edge of my bed and stared at the screen. "Check the seller's profile," Dennis said. "Look at what else they've listed." I tapped through to the seller's page. The username was Fresh Start Home. There were 14 other active listings. A set of vintage vinyl records. A wooden jewelry box, hand-carved. A collection of ceramic birds. A signed print from an artist in Asheville. My stomach went cold. Not dropped. Cold. Like someone had packed it in ice. "That's Mom's stuff," I said. "Dennis, that's all Mom's stuff." "I know." I scrolled down further. The account had been active for about 4 months. Total listings, including ones marked as sold, over 40 items. Some I recognized. Some I didn't. The ones I recognized added up to a list of everything that had been disappearing from my father's house. "Who's selling them?" I asked, even though I already knew. "I haven't confirmed it yet," Dennis said. "But the shipping location is listed as Charlotte." I looked at the screen for a long time. "Craig, what do you want to do?" "I want to be sure," I said. "And then I want Dad to see this himself." Let me explain why I didn't just show my dad the listings immediately. If I walked into that house with my phone and said, "Vanessa's been selling Mom's things behind your back," one of two things would happen. Either Dad would believe me, confront Vanessa, and she'd have time to delete the listings, close the account, and spin some story about how I fabricated the whole thing. Or Dad wouldn't believe me, not because he's stupid, but because believing me would mean accepting that the woman he married, the woman he let reorganize his entire home and his grief, had been deceiving him from the start. That's a hard thing to accept from your son who's had obvious problems with your new wife. Vanessa had been laying groundwork for months. She'd told Dad that I had unresolved grief. She'd told mutual friends that I was having a hard time with the transition. She'd even suggested to Megan, in one of those sweet, concerned voices, that maybe Craig could benefit from talking to someone. She'd prediscredited me. Classic move. And it meant I couldn't just present evidence. I had to create a situation where Dad discovered the truth without it being filtered through me. So I got methodical. The first thing Dennis and I did was confirm the seller's identity. Dennis is the kind of guy who still knows how to find things out without a computer. He called a buddy who ran a small antique shop and had experience with online consignment platforms. Within 2 days, they'd established that Fresh Start Home was using a P.O. box for shipping, but the payments were going to a Venmo account linked to an email address that started with Vanessa K. I didn't even need to check. Her maiden name was Kessler. Next, Dennis and I went through every listing on the account, active and sold. We cross-referenced each item against our memories and against photos from family events. Megan helped too. I sent her screenshots of listings without telling her where they came from and asked, "Do you recognize any of this?" She called me back within 20 minutes. "Craig, that's Mom's jewelry box. That's her record collection. That's the watercolor set from Savannah. Where did you find these?" I told her. The line went quiet for a long time. "How much has she sold?" Megan asked. I did the math. Based on the listings marked sold and their prices, Vanessa had moved roughly $8,000 worth of our mother's belongings over 4 months. And that was just what we could account for. Some items had been listed and sold before we started tracking. The real number was probably higher. "Does Dad know?" Megan asked. "No." "Are you going to tell him?" "Not yet. Not like this." Over the next 2 weeks, I built a file. Dennis thought I was being too careful, but I told him something I'd learned from years of working with building inspectors. Documentation doesn't just prove your case. It removes the other side's ability to reframe the story. Every screenshot was timestamped. Every listing was archived. Every cross-reference between a sold item and a family photo was matched up. I even found a few listings where Vanessa had photographed items on surfaces I recognized from the house. One of the ceramic birds was photographed on the kitchen counter with the backsplash tile visible behind it. My mother chose that tile. While I was building the file, I kept visiting Dad's house. Normal visits. Acting normal. This was the hardest part. Sitting at the kitchen table while Vanessa poured me coffee and made small talk about her garden plans, knowing what I knew. She was talking about putting in raised beds along the back fence. I just nodded and sipped my coffee. "You're quiet today," she said once. "Long week. You work too hard, Craig. You should take some time off." "I'll think about it." She touched my shoulder as she walked past, and it took everything in me not to react. I just looked at the coffee in my mug and reminded myself that patience wasn't weakness. Patience was structural. One thing I did during this period was check whether Vanessa had ever mentioned any of this to Dad, even obliquely. I asked him one evening when Vanessa was at a friend's house. We were sitting in the living room, which now looked like a page from a furniture catalog. No personality. No history. "Dad, Did Vanessa ever talk to you about selling any of Mom's things? Like donating or consigning? He looked confused. No. What? Just wondering. Megan was asking about some of Mom's stuff, and I wasn't sure if anything had been given away. Everything's in the garage, he said. Vanessa organized it all. Right. He looked at me a beat too long. Craig, are you and Vanessa okay? She mentioned you've been a little distant. We're fine, Dad. That conversation confirmed what I needed to know. Dad had no idea. He genuinely believed every item of Mom's was packed neatly in those garage boxes, waiting for whenever the family wanted to go through them. Vanessa had constructed a version of events, and Dad had accepted it because he trusted his wife. Megan wanted to come down and confront Vanessa directly. I talked her out of it. If we do this wrong, I told her, Vanessa will make it about us. About the angry stepchildren who can't let go. We need Dad to see this with his own eyes. How? I'm working on it. I was also trying to figure out something else. What exactly was Vanessa planning to do with the money? The Venmo account was separate from anything she shared with Dad. She wasn't depositing it into their joint account. This wasn't about household finances. This was a private fund, built by selling a dead woman's belongings while the dead woman's husband believed they were safely packed in boxes 12 feet from where he parked his car. I spent a few evenings reading about community property laws in North Carolina. Turns out, items that belonged to a deceased first spouse and were kept in the marital home occupy a gray area. If they weren't formally bequeathed to specific heirs, the surviving spouse technically owns them. But selling them secretly and pocketing the money while lying about their whereabouts? That's a different conversation, especially in a marriage where financial transparency is assumed. I wasn't building a legal case. I was building a clear picture. Then in mid-June, Vanessa made a move I didn't expect. Dad called me on a Wednesday evening. His voice had that particular brightness that Vanessa's influence produced, like someone had wound him up. Craig, Vanessa and I want to have a family dinner this Saturday. Just us, you, Heather, Megan if she can make it. Vanessa says she has some wonderful news she wants to share. What kind of wonderful news? She wouldn't tell me. She wants it to be a surprise for everyone. I called Megan immediately. She could make it down by Friday night. Then I called Dennis. Family dinner. Saturday. Vanessa has wonderful news. Dennis was quiet for a moment. What do you think it is? I don't know, but I think whatever she's planning, it's going to change the house again. And I think Saturday might be the right time. The file's ready? It's been ready for a week. Then what are you waiting for? I wasn't waiting. I was making sure the timing was right. In architecture, you learn that the moment you reveal the design to a client matters almost as much as the design itself. Show it too early, before the foundation is set, and they focus on the wrong things. Show it too late, after decisions are locked, and they feel trapped. Saturday was the right moment. Whatever Vanessa's wonderful news was, it would put everyone in the same room. And the boxes would be right there in the garage. I'll need your help, I told Dennis. Can you come to dinner? Nobody invited me. I'm inviting you. Your family. And you need to be there when Dad opens those boxes. Saturday arrived, and I felt the kind of calm that only comes when you've done all the preparation you can and everything else is just execution. Heather drove with me. She knew everything. She'd been the one sitting next to me on the couch at 11 at night while I organized screenshots into folders and matched listing photos to family albums. She hadn't tried to talk me out of it or push me to go faster. She just said, "You'll know when it's right." Megan got in Friday night. We sat on my back porch and went through the file one more time. 43 items confirmed as Diane's. 27 already sold. 16 still listed as active, including Mom's oil painting, which Dennis had flagged first. What if Dad doesn't believe it? Megan asked. He will. We're not going to tell him. He's going to see it. Dennis showed up at Dad's house about 10 minutes before dinner, which produced exactly the reaction I expected. Vanessa opened the door, and her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Dennis, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you. Craig invited me. Hope that's all right." I brought pie. He held up a store-bought pecan pie with the absolute confidence of a man who has never apologized for a dessert in his life. Vanessa looked at me. I shrugged. The more the merrier, right? She recovered quickly. Of course. Come in, come in. Dinner was roasted chicken, green beans, and a grain salad that Vanessa described as something I saw in a magazine. The table was set with new dishes I didn't recognize. No sign of the stoneware Mom and Dad had used for 25 years. I didn't ask about it. The conversation was careful. Dennis talked about a fishing trip. Heather mentioned a landscape project she was working on. Dad told a story about a former student who'd become a history professor, which gave him visible joy. Megan asked about the garden. Through all of it, Vanessa was vibrating with barely contained excitement. She kept looking at Dad like she was waiting for a cue. Finally, over coffee, Dad cleared his throat. So, Vanessa has something she wants to share with everyone. Vanessa put down her cup and clasped her hands together. Full performance mode. Well, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I finally decided it's time. Rob and I have been talking about making some bigger changes to the house, and I've been working with a designer to draw up plans. She pulled out her phone and started showing renderings. A completely remodeled kitchen. New cabinetry, new countertops, the arched doorway between the kitchen and dining room squared off and widened. The built-in bookshelves in the living room ripped out and replaced with a modern media wall. The reading nook under the stairs converted into a storage closet. Every single element my mother had designed. Gone. I know it's a big project, Vanessa said, but I've been looking into costs, and I think we can manage it if we're smart about it. I've already set aside some money for the initial phase. I felt Megan go rigid next to me. Under the table, Heather put her hand on my knee. Set aside money? I asked. My voice was completely level. From where? Oh, I've been saving for my commissions. Don't worry about the money side. The point is, this house needs an update. It's been the same for, 15 years? It's time to make it ours. Ours. The word landed on the table like a brick. Dad looked uncertain. It is a lot of change, Vanessa. Rob, we talked about this. Fresh start, remember? That's what we agreed on. I looked at Dennis. He gave me the smallest nod. Hey, Dad, I said. Before we get too deep into renovation plans, there's something I've been meaning to ask about. Megan and I were hoping to go through some of Mom's boxes in the garage. She's been wanting a few things for her apartment. Mind if we do that now? Vanessa's expression shifted. Just slightly. A tightening around the jaw. Oh, we can do that another time, she said. Tonight's about the renovation. It'll only take a few minutes, Megan said. I've been trying to get Mom's watercolors for months. Dad stood up. Sure, let's go take a look. I haven't been through those boxes myself, actually. Might be nice to see what's in there. That sentence. I haven't been through those boxes myself. That was the whole thing, right there. He'd trusted Vanessa to pack them. He'd never checked. We all walked to the garage. Vanessa followed, but her energy had changed completely. The excitement was gone. In its place was something I'd never seen on her face before. It looked like calculation. Fast, quiet calculation, like someone running through options in real time. The boxes were still stacked against the back wall. 12 of them, neatly labeled in Vanessa's handwriting. Dad walked over and put his hand on the first box. Diane's Things, living room. He looked at it for a moment with an expression that made my chest ache. Then he pulled it down and set it on the workbench. Let's see what we've got. He opened the flaps. Inside were 3 framed photographs wrapped in newspaper. A decorative candle that I didn't recognize as Mom's. And packing peanuts. Dad stared into the box. He reached in and moved the packing peanuts around. His hand went to the bottom and came back up empty. This can't be right, he said. Vanessa, where's the rest of the stuff from the living room? Vanessa had her arms crossed. I may have split things between boxes. Let me think about which ones. Let's check another one, Dennis said quietly. Dad pulled down the next box. Diane's Things, bedroom. He opened it. A bathrobe. 2 scarves. Tissue paper. He looked at Vanessa. His face was different now. Not angry yet. Confused. The expression of a man whose operating assumption is collapsing in real time. Where's the jewelry box? He said. Diane's mother's jewelry box was in the bedroom. The oil painting above the bed. Where are they? Rob, I'm sure they're in one of the other boxes. Let me. Open them all, Megan said. Her voice was steady, but I could see her hands shaking. Open every single one. Dad looked at Megan, then at me. Then he turned and started opening boxes. One by one. 12 boxes. Each one the same. A few token items surrounded by packing material, tissue paper, old newspapers. The ceramic bird collection, gone. The record collection, gone. The grandmother's jewelry box, gone. The Savannah watercolors, gone. The signed print from Asheville, gone. The vintage glass paperweights, gone. The 20 years of first edition novels, gone. 12 boxes that should have contained a lifetime of Diane's belongings. 12 boxes that contained almost nothing. Dad stood in the middle of the garage, surrounded by open boxes and packing material. His hands were at his sides. He was completely still. "Vanessa." His voice was low and flat. I'd never heard that tone from my father in my entire life. "Where are Diane's things?" She opened her mouth. "Don't tell me they're in another box." "I just opened all of them." "Where are they?" The garage was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator through the wall. Vanessa's eyes darted to me, then to Dennis, then back to Dad, and I watched the mask slip. Not all the way, but enough. Her chin lifted slightly, and her expression hardened into something closer to what had been underneath this whole time. "Rob, some of those things were old. They were taking up space. I made decisions about what to keep and what to let go of, and I did it because someone had to." "Let go of how?" Dad said. "What does let go of mean?" She didn't answer. Dad turned to me. His eyes were wet, but his jaw was set. "Craig, do you know something I don't?" I didn't rush it. I looked at my dad standing there in the garage surrounded by empty boxes, and I thought about all the ways I could have handled this moment. I could have been angry. I could have pointed at Vanessa and unloaded everything I'd been carrying for weeks. But that would have made it about me, and it wasn't about me. It was about Dad and what he deserved to know. "Yeah, Dad," I said. "I do." I pulled out my phone. I opened the folder I'd put together. I handed it to him. 2 weeks ago, Uncle Dennis found one of Mom's paintings listed for sale on a consignment website. I looked into it. The seller account has been active for about 4 months. The shipping location is Charlotte. The payments go to a Venmo account linked to an email address with Vanessa's maiden name. Dad took the phone. He scrolled. Slowly, I watched his face change the way a landscape changes when cloud cover moves across it. Confusion gave way to recognition. Recognition gave way to something worse. "That's her jewelry box," he said, almost to himself. "That's the one her mother gave her. It sold for $120, I said. Not to be cruel. Because he needed the number. He needed to understand the scale. He kept scrolling. The ceramic birds. The record collection. The Savannah watercolors. The signed Asheville print. 43 items documented. 27 already sold. Total proceeds as far as we could calculate. Just over $8,000. Dad set the phone down on the workbench. He didn't look at Vanessa immediately. He stood with his hands on the workbench edge and his head down, and I could see his shoulders move with each breath. Nobody spoke. The only sound was Vanessa shifting her weight on the concrete floor. When he finally turned to her, his face had gone through something and come out the other side. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't crying. He was looking at her the way you look at a document that contradicts everything you thought you signed. You sold her things. Vanessa's chin was still lifted, but her eyes were moving fast. Calculating. "Rob, listen to me. Some of those items were collecting dust. They had value, and they were just sitting in boxes. I put the money aside for us, for the renovation, for our future. You told me everything was in the garage. Most of it was. The important things. Her mother's jewelry box was important, Vanessa. The painting she made was important. Her records were important." His voice cracked on the last sentence. Just once. Then it steadied. "You looked me in the eye and told me you'd organized everything. You let me believe it was all here." Vanessa switched tactics. Her eyes got wet. On command, I'm almost certain, and her voice softened into that therapeutic tone she'd been using since the day she moved in. "Rob, I was trying to help you heal. You were surrounded by reminders of loss. I made judgment calls, and maybe some of them were wrong, but I did it out of love. I did it because I couldn't watch you live in the past anymore. You did it for $120 per item," Dennis said from the corner of the garage. He said it quietly. No drama. Just fact. Vanessa's head snapped toward him. The mask came off completely. Not the therapeutic voice, not the gentle concern, not the sympathetic smile. What was underneath was sharper than I'd expected. Cold and cornered. "You have no right to be here, Dennis. You have no right to go through my personal accounts. Your personal accounts funded by my sister's belongings," Dennis said. "I think I've got some standing. This is between me and my husband. It stopped being between you and Rob when you sold things that belonged to his children's mother," I said. Dad held up his hand. The room went quiet. He looked at Vanessa for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was even and terribly sad. "I want you to leave the house tonight. Stay somewhere else. I need to think. Rob, you're being manipulated. Craig has been waiting for this. He's never accepted me. Craig didn't sell Diane's things and lie about it. Go pack a bag, Vanessa. She stared at him. I think she genuinely expected to talk her way through it. That's how it had always worked before. The soft voice, the concerned face, the therapeutic framing. But Dad was looking at 12 open boxes full of nothing, and no amount of framing could fill them. She went upstairs. 20 minutes later, she came back down with a suitcase and left without another word. Her car pulled out of the driveway, and the garage door was still open, and all those boxes were still sitting there, lids up, guts exposed. Dad sat down on the workbench stool. He put his face in his hands. Megan sat down next to him and put her arm around his shoulders. Dennis stood by the door with his arms folded, looking at the floor. I stood there and let my father grieve for the second time. Over the following weeks, a few things happened in sequence. Dad talked to a lawyer. Given the circumstances, the deception, the secret account, the sale of a deceased spouse's belongings without disclosure, the attorney recommended pursuing an annulment rather than a standard divorce. The financial misrepresentation during the marriage strengthened the case. North Carolina annulment law has specific provisions for fraud, and this qualified. Vanessa tried to come back twice. The first time, she showed up with flowers and a speech about couples counseling. Dad told her through the door that his attorney would be in touch. The second time, she sent a 4-page letter that alternated between apology and accusation. Dad read it, folded it, and gave it to his lawyer. Dennis and I worked on recovering what we could. About a third of the sold items were recoverable. Some buyers were willing to sell back when we explained the situation. Mom's oil painting came back. The grandmother's jewelry box came back, though the contents had been separated and sold individually. The pearl earrings Megan wanted were gone. We never found them. Some things you don't get back. That's the realistic part that nobody tells you about these stories. The records, the first editions, a lot of the ceramics, gone into the hands of strangers who had no idea they were buying a dead woman's legacy from the woman who replaced her. You make peace with it because the alternative is letting it eat you. Dad moved slowly through the process. He wasn't the same afterward, and I won't pretend he bounced back. He was quieter for a while. He spent some time with a therapist, a real one, not the armchair version Vanessa had been playing. He told me once that the hardest part wasn't the money or even the objects. It was realizing he'd let someone into his life who saw his grief as an opportunity. I didn't see it, he said. We were sitting on the back porch in September, the air just starting to cool. She told me she was helping, and I didn't look any further than that. You trusted your wife, Dad. That's not a character flaw. It was this time. No, what she did was the flaw. You just loved somebody. He was quiet for a while after that. By November, the annulment was finalized. Vanessa got nothing from the house. The secret Venmo account was documented in the proceedings, and the court ordered restitution for the sold items, though collecting proved to be a separate challenge. She moved out of state. Last I heard from a mutual acquaintance, she was dating someone in Raleigh. I said a quiet prayer for whoever that was. Dad started putting the house back together in his own way, not restoring it to exactly what it had been. That wasn't possible, and honestly, it wasn't the point. But the built-in bookshelves got filled with books again. The few recovered photos went back on the mantle. Mom's oil painting hung in the living room instead of the bedroom this time, right where you'd see it when you walked in the front door. Megan came down for Thanksgiving. Dennis brought pie, store-bought, pecan. Heather made sweet potato casserole. Dad told a history joke so bad that Megan threw a dinner roll at him. And for the first time in a long time, the house felt like it had people in it instead of staging. I walked through the upstairs hallway on my way to wash my hands before dinner. The walls were still agreeable gray, but taped to the wall at eye level, right where the mural used to begin, was a small framed photo I hadn't seen before. It was Mom, about 35 years old, kneeling on a drop cloth with a paintbrush in her hand, grinning at whoever was holding the camera. She had paint on her cheek. Dad must have found it in one of the boxes, one of the real things Vanessa hadn't sold. I stood there for a minute. Then I went downstairs and sat at the table with my family. Sometimes the house doesn't go back to what it was. But if the foundation's sound, you can build something that still holds.